And I think we can get started in a timely way. I know that more people may be popping in as we move along, but let's get going. We're so excited to be here with you today in this virtual conference realm. And my name is MJ Robinson. I'm an assistant editor at the RISD Museum in Providence, Rhode Island. This session is called Confronting Ourselves Together, Building an Inclusive Work Culture, One Conversation at a Time. And in this session today, we'll be sharing an example of one program model called All Staff Dialogues that has been successful at our workplace. We'll also have time to brainstorm ideas for your own workplaces. You will need a large, 2 or 3 large pieces of paper, and a pen would be best. So if you can go grab either a notebook with full-size paper or a few pieces of computer paper right now as we introduce ourselves, that would be awesome. All right, so I'm going to have my friends and colleagues that are co-presenting with me today introduce themselves. And we'll start with Lily.
Hi everyone, my name is Lily Benedict. I am an educator for school and teacher programs at the RISD Museum. Good to be with you all. And I'll hand it off to Kiku.
Hi everyone, I'm Kiku. I am the database manager for our constituent database at the RISD Museum. And I will hand it off to Kajette.
Hello, good morning. Hi everybody, my name is Kajette Solomon and I am the SCI Program Specialist, and SCI stands for Social Equity and Inclusion. Excited to be here with everybody this morning.
All right, and now I'd like to invite everyone watching at home to take a deep breath in with me, and we're gonna take a breath in and out. I know that being in a virtual conference is very different from the in-person excitement experience that we might be used to. So let's take a breath to connect with ourselves. So take a breath in and out. Notice your feet, any sensations in your feet. Maybe your feet are planted on the ground. Maybe you're sitting in a chair and you can notice the weight of your body in the chair that you're sitting in. And I'd like you to welcome an awareness of the place and the land that you are occupying. The RISD Museum is built on what is now called College Hill, the ancestral territory of the Narragansett people. Many indigenous communities have moved through this area over hundreds of generations, and indigenous people from many nations near and far, including the Northeastern Algonquin, continue to live, study, and work in Providence today. We as museum staff are committed to actively redressing in our daily work our shortcomings as their neighbors and the many violent legacies of colonialism. An acknowledgement of Native voices and histories is crucial to this work as we move forward to rectify the destructive past. Thank you for being present here and hearing a little bit about our context, our museum, where we are. So what we'll be doing today is, we just did introductions and a land acknowledgement. We will be going through a few community agreements. We'll have a short breakout group moment of reflection and connection. And kind of in the middle of our session, we will have a more informational presentation about all staff dialogues at the RISD Museum. And the latter part of our meeting is really a brainstorming, planning time for where you'll be guided through ideas for your own workplace and your own practice. All right, so community agreements, some of you may be familiar, especially if you're in the education field, are ways to hold something like an all-staff dialogue or a conversation in a way where you're able to facilitate it well, and it's an anti-oppressive method. We borrowed some of our community agreement ideas from facilitation guide from Aorta. I think Kiku will place a link in the chat on Whova if you're curious to read more about anti-oppressive facilitation. So some of the community agreements that we tend to use at the RISD Museum that we can apply today are to use both and or yes and language instead of but. So if someone has shared something and you find yourself wanting to say, but what about XYZ? There's a way to acknowledge all perspectives by saying, yes, and I also think XYZ. Instead of refuting someone you're adding onto and building together. Share the air is a concept of some of us more naturally take up more space in conversation, where maybe more, I know for myself, I'm a little more outspoken, I feel confident to share in a group, but some people are a little shyer. So if you're someone who's outspoken, leaving some space or holding back your comments to make room for people who might have a little bit, take a little longer to speak up. And if you're someone who's a little quieter, taking the risk of being vulnerable and sharing so that there's a lot of voices in the room. One important thing we do in RISD Museum dialogues is, and we'll talk more about what this means, but we have conversation for conversation's sake, not to come to a resolution. Obviously, this is different in kind of tactical work meetings where you want to reach resolutions and create plans. But this is a different kind of dialogue. Something I wanted to set up for today is that, especially on the digital, but in any platform, that we take care of ourselves. We take a break if needed. So we are going to have moments together in slightly smaller groups where if you can have your video on and be fully present, that would be awesome. But we know that we all have lives to live. And if you need to take breaks, turn yourself off camera for a little while, please do so. A step to active listening is to listen, not to plan a response in your head. Intent versus impact means accepting someone's generosity when they tell you if something has impacted them, something you've said has impacted them harmfully, accepting it even if it wasn't your intent to say something hurtful. And last, to pay attention to feelings and dynamics, both inside yourself and within the group dynamic, because that can help lead to a healthy dialogue and reflection. All right, so with that, I am going to pass this over. Kajette, would you like me to share the slide for your prompt?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So thank you so much, MJ, for that recap. So as part of what we usually do for our all-staff dialogues at the RISD Museum is to have a moment to actively listen and to practice doing that, because it is a skill. We're going to break out into 4 groups. But before we do that, I'm just going to give the instruction. And this is like a moment of reflection and connection where we're going to share what we're comfortable sharing from this prompt. And we're going to share above your worry, but beneath your panic. A nice middle ground there for what you're comfortable to share. And we can either, if you want to use the Whova chat to respond to this in your breakout group, you can, or suggest having a piece of paper and something to write with, to respond, to reflect, and then respond. So the prompt is, what feelings, thoughts, or things going on did you have to set aside to be here in professional mode today? And we would normally do this in our all-staff dialogues in pairs. literally just two people where one person speaks, no one says, the other partner doesn't say anything, and then the other person responds, the other partner listens. And so we're just gonna do this in our group. And Scarlett, whenever you're ready, we can break out into our groups.
If you haven't yet joined your breakout room, please look at your screen and join the breakout room. Thank you. As a reminder, if you haven't looked at your screen, you'll have an invitation to join a breakout room. Please click the join button to go to that breakout room. Thank you. As a reminder, you'll have a screen to invite you to a breakout room. Please click join. As a reminder, you have an invitation to a breakout room. Please select join on your computer screen or mobile device so you can join that breakout room. As a reminder, you've been invited to a breakout room. Please join that breakout room. As a reminder, you should have received a breakout room invitation. Please go there. Hey Ted, you've been invited to a breakout room. Yeah. Hey Ken, you should have gotten an invitation to a breakout room.
Okay, so I have started sharing my screen. I think it's fair to say that everyone is back from the breakout sessions at this point, right? So thank you all for sharing what you did share in our breakout rooms. Now Kajette and I are going to tell you all a bit about a conversation series that the four of us, Kajette, myself, MJ, and Kiku, as well as many other staff at the RISD Museum have been facilitating for the past 3 years or so. And we call this series All Staff Dialogues. So we're gonna tell you a bit about what these All Staff Dialogues are, how they came to be, and some of the impacts that they have had at the RISD Museum before we move back into our breakout groups to do a little more discussion and some brainstorming and planning about how this could potentially be useful for all of you in your other institutions. So All Staff Dialogues are a conversation series that is very much focused on conversation as a goal. So we like to specify that they are not meetings. They're not trying to give us concrete to-do lists or clear resolution, but they're really a trust building and communication building exercise within our full staff. The RISD Museum has a fairly large staff. We obviously have lots of meetings all the time, but except for full staff meetings that are usually pretty logistically oriented, we rarely have opportunities to get together as a full group and talk and build trust with one another. The topics of these All Staff Dialogues have really all been oriented towards issues of inclusion, diversity, and equity. And in a minute, Kajette is going to give you all some more concrete examples of topics and questions we've had for these dialogues. All staff are invited to these. So we try to, encourage all staff to attend. We've had support from our senior staff to making ways to make this more possible for people. So hourly staff are paid if they attend. We schedule them usually early in the morning before the museum opens so that we try to get as many people as possible to come. And they are facilitated by staff at the museum, and we now have a rotating group of staff who facilitate these conversations from all different departments. And we'll tell you a bit more about our facilitation team in a moment. Kiku's going to drop an article that we have that gives a bit more of an overview about all staff dialogues that we have on the RISD Museum website into the Whova chat. Okay. All right. So as I said, we've been doing these since 2017, and there were many factors that kind of motivated us starting to do these, both externally to the museum and internally. Certainly a big motivating factor was that the RISD Museum is part of RISD, the art college, and RISD students at the time and up until now have been very active in pushing RISD administration as well as the museum to really make some sweeping changes around issues of social equity and inclusion. So there was a lot of student kind of motivation for this and wanting to really listen to what the students were saying that they needed more of. Of course, obviously in the larger world, there were and continue to be Black Lives Matter movement and conversation that's pushing museums and all institutions forward as well as calls for decolonizations of museums. So all of these conversations were happening. And within the museum, we felt that we wanted to make progress, but weren't always sure how to do it. We felt that, you know, sometimes it was easy to get stuck in a sense of continuing to do things the way they've been done, that as a pretty big staff, we were sort of separated in our different departments, and didn't always have the trust or even sort of familiarity with one another to know how to work as a big group to take on some of these issues. And we also felt that we had skills that we could offer to this. So we really started as mostly education staff who took this on. But the real impetus for beginning the all staff dialogues actually was from one of our fellows, Amber Lopez, who was our former Nancy Prophet Fellow at the RISD Museum, who actually attended a NEMA training in 2017 that maybe some of you were at the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center in Connecticut. And that was a training on how to run salon-style conversations for the public around challenging topics, and how to hold space for difficult conversations. Amber went to this training and she had a breakthrough, which was that, you know, it's wonderful to have these for the public, but these could also, there was a need internally at the RISD Museum to have these conversations among ourselves. So she really took this training that was meant for, you know, kind of public conversation and said, let's start doing this internally. So it started, as I said, with mostly education staff, because we feel pretty comfortable facilitating conversations. So myself and MJ and Kajette joined Amber in facilitating our first conversation in 2017. After doing a few of those, we wanted to continue doing them, but realized that it was a lot of work. It was a heavy lift, and we wanted more of the staff to kind of join in the effort of making these continue. So we invited all staff at the RISD Museum to a facilitation training meeting where we went over some basics of facilitation. And from that point, about 20 staff members came forward to join our facilitation team and break into smaller groups of about 3 or 4 people to plan and facilitate all staff dialogues. So these now happen about 2 to 3 times a year. They are on topics of choice by the facilitation team. And having more people in our facilitation team, I think, has really increased the overall staff commitment to this, as well as just made the process more sustainable as an ongoing effort for staff. Okay. Challenges. So we found that a lot of the challenges, we were fortunate that a lot of the challenges were more internal barriers among ourselves. We were fortunate to have, you know, senior staff at the museum be very supportive of this. But we often had to overcome sort of our own barriers of feeling like this was something that we needed outside experts to help us with, and realize that we did in fact have the ability to do this ourselves. and that we did not have to be experts in some of the different topics that we were discussing in order to be able to be effective facilitators of these dialogues. So a lot of the things that, as we especially did the facilitation training, you know, that people mentioned as concerns of theirs were not feeling like we had authority, not feeling like experts, and fear of showing emotion or vulnerability with coworkers and in a professional kind of setting. Looking back on some of those concerns and challenges, we were able to recognize that those really stem from the elements of white supremacy culture, which is, if you're not familiar with the term, there are characteristics of institutional culture that very much come from white supremacy ideas that, and Kiku's going to drop that, that link again into the Whova chat. So these elements really all sort of were stemming from some of the very things that we were trying to overcome in trying to move forward with these dialogues. Okay, so I am going to now turn it over to Kajette to tell you a bit more. So let's stop sharing my screen.
Okay, hi, sorry about that. Everyone can see my screen? Yes, okay. So thank you so much, Lily, for getting us thus far about the history of our all-staff dialogue. So we tend to have a really solid but very flexible type of how we go about these all-staff dialogues. So there's a general schedule of how one type of dialogue would look like. And so after beginning with our community agreements and we put the agenda up in the room, typically we're together. We have done these virtually. We'll talk about that a little bit. That we have an active listening exercise, which we did earlier, and or as a type of icebreaker. And sometimes we do those in small groups, and sometimes we do them in pair shares. And it just gets us ready to listen and ready to be open and ready to have conversation. An example of an icebreaker sometimes we do where you turn to a partner and you take turns telling each other something like a prompt like we did today, or you can share out to the group, or sometimes we write things down and respond in that way. So our dialogues are usually around one particular topic, and we will talk for about 45 minutes to an hour, and they take different formats as well. In the virtual sphere, we've been able to pivot and do it virtually as well. We've done one this summer in June following the murder of George Floyd and the uprising again of the Black Lives Matter movement. We were able to have a virtual session. So this format that we're doing it with you is a similar way that we've done it this summer with our all-staff dialogue session over the summer. So some of our sample questions or points of discussion have been centered around very current topics in the museum world. And the first one we did was in 2017, and we asked, what is the museum's responsibility when exhibiting artworks that may offend? And this came from the 2017 Whitney Biennial, where white artist Dana Schutz presented her painting, Open Casket, which is Emmett Till's body. And the controversy was, what was the position of the artist to be able to depict a Black body? And there was a lot of controversy around that. And at the time, we were getting ready to host an exhibition called Phantom of Liberty, where we were going to put on display racial epithets, some culturally sensitive material, and things around death and things around sexuality and race and all of that. And so we wanted to look at ourselves and say, if we're putting these up and things that can be triggering and possibly offensive, what is our role and how can we be responsible for our visitors? So that was a question we asked. Another session was, what does it mean to decolonize the museum? This conversation on decolonization happened following protests by a group called, I think it's Decolonize This Place, where the Brooklyn Museum hired a white curator for their African collection. And we had that conversation around, well, what does decolonization mean? And what does it mean in a museum? And what does it mean for an institution to make certain choices about who they hire and who's telling whose stories? So that was a conversation that we had following that. And on that picture on the right, that was that session, and it was 8:30 in the morning, and we were blasting Beyonce and Jay-Z in the museum, and it was great. One of the highlights of my career thus far. All right. And then another session we had, which was, I think it was last fall around this time, was what is white fragility and how does it manifest in your work? In this session, we had facilitators from curatorial, exhibition management, and conservation. And they were asking, we played a couple videos about what is white fragility and how does it show up in the workplace, but also concepts of whiteness as race as well. And in that session, we broke up into about 4 small groups and had some leading questions, took lots of notes in facilitation. And from that session, we also followed up with a series of lunchtime podcast listenings. And for that session, we listened to Seen on Radio, their whiteness series. I think they had about 14 sessions. I think there was about maybe 5 or 6 lunchtime sessions to follow up from that, and a bunch of readings, and everyone really got into that. And that was an emotional session, and there was lots of prickly feelings, but it was really great for us to have opened up in that way. And there's a lot of ways in which we have these difficult conversations, and we talk about race, and we talk a lot about people of color, and don't think about whiteness as race as well. That was a really fruitful session. So after that, we really took time during these sessions as facilitators in the beginning to survey the staff and ask them what was fruitful, what could be improved, what were some challenges, or what would you like to see as different types of topics. So if you want to take a second to just read through a few of those comments. So some staff, particularly those who work in areas like installation or security or visitor services, indicated that these kinds of topics were not a regular part of their work and that they appreciated the opportunity to speak with colleagues about these. Nearly all staff expressed the value of speaking openly with colleagues with whom they may not work closely with, as a way to break down some of the invisible institutional barriers and siloing that sometimes separates us as staff. Others also mentioned that they found these dialogues engage them on both personal and professional levels, also breaking down some of the barriers we may have within ourselves about our division between who we are as individuals and who we are as professionals. All right. So we do get asked a lot, since we've been doing this for about 3 years, that what's come from this? While we say that these sessions goals are for conversation only and not for to-dos and checklists, that we found that there's been a shift in our culture where there's an increase in trust and comfort around discussing these sensitive issues. More people across departments and levels are invited into these moments of reflection, and action in relation to issues in the museum, instead of only being senior staff in the room that are having these conversations. From that, we have seen also from our summer session, where we asked ourselves, how can we be more responsive institution rather than reactive institution? And this was coming off all the other art museums having these anti-racist or solidarity statements and not really actionable plans. And so we went after our summer all staff dialogue, we came up with a bunch of things that we wanted to see done happen at our institution. And from that came this anti-racist working group of museum staff who developed what is now our anti-racist working statement or action plan, which is on our website right now. I think if Kiku can drop that link as well in the Hoover chat. It's a working document. It's a transparent document. It is a living thing that will change over time. And it highlights how we're going to do the work of anti-racism, how we're going to be a much more social, equitable institution and an inclusive place. And not just think about diversity as numbers, but about who belongs, who we invite into our institution, who's been left out, stories that we're not telling. And all of those things have come from just the way we've been talking in the last 3 years. Also, a little shout out to me that from these conversations and the direction that our institution wants to go, that there's been a development of my new position, which is a museum SEI program specialist. And that's the next steps from working on our anti-racist work, our anti-racist action plan, is to the implementation of my position, which is an accountability position, which is a connector between not just the departments and within our institution, within the museum itself, but also connecting with all of the SEI and DEI work that RISD is doing, that there is a representative that is in the museum as well, and that we also have this public-facing entity that we do need to be accountable to as well. Our community partners, our internal stakeholders, getting our board on board. We're grateful that we don't have a board that dictates to us what we can and cannot do, but more so oversight and the legal capacities of a board, but that they're also understanding that this anti-racist action plan and everything is moving us forward into the next phase of being a much more equitable institution, and my position is part of that. So on that note, we're going to spend more time in our breakout groups thinking about how all-staff dialogues could possibly look in your institution, something similar that you may already do that could be expanded on, finding some partners in your staff members and your colleagues to sort of do this type of work in a way that works for your institution. So we're gonna just do some brainstorming in our breakout groups for about 35 minutes. So we're gonna get started.
This is just a reminder, you should see an invitation to a breakout room. Click join. Hi, David and Beth, you should see an invitation to a breakout room on your screen. Select join. Hi, David. You should have gotten an invitation to a breakout room. Hi, Denise. You should have an invitation to join breakout room 3. Just select join breakout room. Hi, Beth and David. You should have an invitation to join breakout room 1. Select join breakout room.
Scarlett, I didn't mean to leave my breakout room. Could you put me back in?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't think I can because it's still counting it down.
Oh, okay. Oops.
Sorry, Lily.
All right. Sorry to everyone in my breakout room. I accidentally left it before I meant to.
Hi, everyone. I'm trying to see if everyone's back. I think all the rooms are closed out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. My small group, I think we had some great conversations. I hope the same happened in all of your small groups. One of the links that we were hoping to share out during the small groups, I'm not sure if all of you had a chance to talk about this, was 11 Skills of an Effective Facilitator. It's a resource that we found helpful at the RISD Museum to help train each other and ourselves about building up facilitator skills. So I'm going to share that link in the chat right now, in the Whova chat. And we also have a follow-up document that we created. I just want to make sure I'm getting the right link. I'm going to put that in the chat also. And if you can all just open it up now so that you can see what it is. I can see if people are joining or not. So, so please open up the doc. I'm seeing all these anonymous animals join, so thank you. So here we have just kind of a summary of what this session was about, contact information for the four of us if you want to reach out to ask questions or make contact later. Some of the links that we had put in the chat so that you have them all in one space instead of having to go back to Whova later on. And then on the second page, we're hoping to continue this conversation. So everyone should have something like this from our little workshop breakout room section with whatever you are brainstorming or writing down from the people in your session for ideas about how to bring something like this to your institution. And we would love to kind of group think all of those great ideas. So there's a section where you can add your name as a collaborator so that we kind of know who's participating in this document. Feel free to share your contact information if you feel comfortable. And then just list out some of the topics that you thought of, list out some of the questions that you have left after this session was over. And then instead of just having your small group to be able to benefit from all of those great ideas, the rest of us can see that as well. And we encourage everybody to kind of take a look at this document throughout the conference, and the facilitators will be active in this document, answering questions and such for the rest of the conference. And then hopefully this will be a really robust document that all of you can refer back to in the coming weeks and months. We were going to have a chat share out part right now, but if you have any paper left with you, if you can write down on your piece of paper, what is one action that you can take in the coming months, however small it was, that was inspired by what we talked about today? What's your next step or a step that you'd like to take to bring this kind of work to your institution? So just take a minute, and when you have that, you can just hold it up to your screen. I will share mine. I know I have a jump start on everyone because we're already doing these at the RISD Museum, but it's been a little while since we had a dialogue, so I need to make sure that we're regrouping and kind of self-organizing to keep these going. Does anybody else want to share one of your takeaways? I see. Step up our effort to be socially relevant. Thank you, Ed. And feel free to unmute yourself as well if you want to share. Let's see, community outreach, exhibit design for DEI with community input. That sounds awesome. And I don't have everybody's face here, so, oh, I think I missed some people on my other page. Conversation involving, include as many people as possible, spend some time with literature content and decolonizing museums and the collection. So collaborating with teenagers on what makes a museum feel LGBTQ friendly. Survey staff to understand barriers from joining our anti-racism professional development group, and would an art looking and making session be a good way to bring more voices in? Sounds like a great idea. Ask that these be required in our 2021 work plans. Yes, that would be awesome. So thank you, everybody. I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone puts in the Google Doc, and thank you for being present with us and sharing, and I hope you all have a wonderful conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can all unmute and give a collective whoop.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Scarlett, for your help.
Of course.
you.
Great job. And I hope you have a fabulous rest of your conference. And if you need anything, feel free to email us or message us in the app.
All right, great. And my team, let's join in our Zoom link from earlier.
Sounds good.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.